My mother wore a wedding dress to my wedding. Someone has to look like a real bride. The garment bag hung on the back of the bridal suite door like a threat. My mother had insisted on bringing it, claiming she needed somewhere to store her mother of the bride dress while she helped me prepare. I should have known better. With my mother, there was always a performance waiting in the wings. "Sophia, darling, let me fix your veil," she said, her hands hovering near my head like birds of prey. "It's crooked." It wasn't crooked. Nothing about my appearance was less than perfect, I'd made sure of that. But this was her way, finding flaws where none existed, creating problems only she could solve. "It's fine, Mom." She scared, that sharp sound that had punctuated my entire childhood. Fine isn't good enough for a wedding. Though I suppose with that dress. My dress. A sleek, modern sheath that hugged my athletic frame. No train, no beading, no princess ball gown explosion of tulle. Just elegant simplicity that made me feel like myself. "What's wrong with my dress?" "Nothing, sweetheart. It's very practical." She smoothed her hands over her navy blue outfit, or what I thought was navy blue. "I just worry people won't realize you're the bride. You know how confused elderly relatives can get." My maid of honor, Jessica, caught my eye in the mirror and mouthed, "Ignore her." But ignoring my mother was like ignoring a hurricane. You could pretend it wasn't happening, but you'd still end up destroyed. 5 minutes. The wedding coordinator called through the door. "Perfect timing," my mother announced, moving toward the garment bag. "I should change." "Change? Mom, the ceremony is starting." She unzipped the bag. White silk spilled out like an accusation. Not ivory. Not cream. Not champagne. White. A full wedding gown with a cathedral train, delicate lace sleeves, and a bodice covered in seed pearls. The kind of dress I'd tried on months ago while she stood behind me saying, "Now that's a real wedding dress." "Mom." "No. Someone has to look like a real bride," she whispered, already stepping out of her navy outfit. "Your poor grandmother is probably spinning in her grave seeing you walk down the aisle in that slip." Jessica stood frozen, bouquet dangling from her hand. My other bridesmaids, my sister Kate and my college roommate Lynn, had gone silent. "You cannot wear a wedding dress to my wedding." She pulled the gown over her head, the fabric falling perfectly as if tailored for this exact moment of betrayal. Which, knowing my mother, it probably was. "Don't be selfish, Sophia. This is about family tradition. About honoring the sanctity of marriage properly." She turned to the mirror, admiring herself. At 58, she was still beautiful, still thin, still desperate to be the center of every universe. Besides, it's not really a wedding dress. It's just a white formal gown. "With a train," Kate said flatly. "And a veil," Lynn added, as my mother pulled out a fingertip-length veil from the bag. "It's a fascinator," my mother corrected, pinning it to her professionally styled updo. "Completely different." The door opened. My father appeared, took in the scene, and immediately tried to retreat. "Richard," my mother called. "Tell Sophia she's overreacting." My father, a man who'd survived 40 years of marriage by perfecting the art of strategic cowardice, mumbled something about needing to check on the groomsmen and disappeared. "I'm calling security," Jessica said, pulling out her phone. "To remove the mother of the bride." My mother laughed, that tinkling sound that meant someone was about to be eviscerated. How would that look? The gossip would overshadow everything. Poor Sophia, whose own mother had to be dragged away. "Is that what you want, darling? To be remembered as the bride who had her mother arrested?" She was right. She always was. Make a scene, and that becomes the story. Let her wear it, and, what? I become the bride whose mother wore white? The coordinator knocked again. "We need to line up." My mother swept toward the door, her her formal gown's extended hem, trailing behind her. "Come along, Sophia. Mitchell is waiting." Mitchell. My fiancé, who'd laughed off my concerns about my mother. "She just wants to be included," he'd said. "It's sweet how involved she wants to be." We walked toward the chapel entrance, my mother's white gown rustling with each step. Guests were already turning, whispering, pointing. The photographer, confused, started snapping pictures of her. "Mother of the bride," she announced to him, as if that explained the wedding dress. We reached the chapel doors. Inside, 300 guests waited. My mother positioned herself directly behind me, arranging her train. I couldn't pretend it was anything else, with practiced precision. "Mom, I tried one last time. Please. Smile, Sophia." This is your special day. The music began. The doors opened. Every head turned. And every eye landed on my mother. Gasps rippled through the chapel like dominoes. I saw Mitchell's mother half rise from her pew, mouth open. Mitchell himself looked confused, his eyes darting between me and my mother as if trying to solve a puzzle. We began the processional. But instead of watching me, the actual bride, guests stared at the spectacle of my mother in white, gliding down the aisle with the serene smile of someone who'd gotten exactly what she wanted. The photographer, completely confused now, was shooting both of us, unsure who to focus on. My mother subtly positioned herself to catch the light from the stained glass windows, making her dress shimmer. We reached the altar. I took my place next to Mitchell, whose confusion had hardened into something else. Embarrassment? Anger. He leaned close and whispered, "What is she wearing?" Behind us, my mother had positioned herself not with the other parents, but at an angle where she remained in full view of the congregation, her white gown a beacon that drew every eye. The officiant, Reverend Williams, cleared his throat. An elderly man who'd married hundreds of couples, he looked genuinely perplexed by the tableau before him. "Dearly beloved," he began, then stopped. Adjusted his glasses. Looked at me, then at my mother, then back at me. "Before we begin," he said slowly, "I need to clarify something for the legal record." My heart stopped. "Which one of you is marrying Mitchell today?" The silence was absolute. My mother's smile faltered. "I'm the mother of the... You're wearing a wedding dress." His voice was patient but firm. "In my 40 years of performing ceremonies, the person in the wedding dress is typically the bride. So I need verbal confirmation. Are you here to marry this man?" "Of course not. That's ridiculous." "Then why are you dressed as a bride?" The words hung in the air like a bell tolling. Every guest leaned forward. "It's not a wedding dress," my mother said, her voice pitched higher. "It's a formal gown." Reverend Williams studied her over his glasses. "I've performed over 1,000 weddings. That is a wedding dress. With a train. And what appears to be a veil. It's a fascinator. It's a veil. And you're standing at my altar in white while your daughter, the actual bride, stands here in her chosen attire." He turned to the congregation. "I apologize for the confusion, but I cannot proceed without absolute clarity. This is a legal ceremony." He looked at Mitchell. "Who did you come here to marry today?" "Sophia," Mitchell said clearly. "Obviously." "Then I must ask the woman in the wedding dress to take her seat with the other guests. The wedding party only, please." My mother stood frozen. "I'm the mother of the bride." "Not dressed like that. You're not." Reverend Williams' voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. "In this chapel, we honor the sanctity of marriage by respecting its symbols. A wedding dress is worn by a bride. If you're not the bride, you need to change or leave." "This is outrageous." "No. What's outrageous is attempting to upstage a bride at her own wedding." He looked at me with grandfatherly kindness. "Sophia, would you like to continue with your ceremony?" "Yes," I said, finding my voice. "Yes, I would." "Then I need anyone not part of the wedding party to please be seated." My mother looked around wildly, seeking support. But every face, from Mitchell's family to her own sister, reflected the same mixture of shock and second-hand embarrassment. "Richard," she called to my father. He stood slowly, walked to the altar, and took her arm. "Gloria, sit down. You've done enough. But 40 years, I've watched you do this. Make every event about yourself. Every birthday, every graduation, every celebration." His voice was quiet but carried throughout the chapel. "Not today. Not at our daughter's wedding." He led her to the pew, her train dragging behind like defeated flags. She sat rigidly, her white dress a monument to her miscalculation. Reverend Williams nodded to me. "Now then, let's celebrate the actual bride, shall we?" The ceremony proceeded. But something had shifted. The atmosphere, previously tense with second-hand embarrassment, had transformed into something protective, almost celebratory. Every smile directed at me felt like a small rebellion against what my mother had tried to do. When Mitchell kissed me, the chapel erupted in applause, louder and longer than normal, as if the guests were making a point. At the reception, my mother sat at her assigned table, still in white, but somehow diminished. Guests avoided her, their disapproval a silent wall. The photographer, having witnessed the altar confrontation, focused exclusively on Mitchell and me. During the parent dances, the band leader specifically announced, "Now the bride, The lovely Sophia in her gorgeous sleek gown will dance with her father. My Aunt Patricia, my mother's own sister, stopped by our table during dinner. That reverend, she said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. What a blessing to have someone who understands proper wedding etiquette. But the true moment of justice came during the speeches. Mitchell's best man stood, raised his champagne, and said, "When I first met Sophia, I knew she was special. She has this quality, this genuine, authentic grace that never needs to demand attention because she naturally commands respect. Mitchell, you're lucky to have found someone so secure in herself that she doesn't need to steal anyone else's spotlight to shine." The room erupted. It wasn't subtle. Everyone knew exactly what, and who, he meant. My mother left early, claiming a headache. She'd removed the veil, sorry, fascinator, but remained in the white dress, a ghost at her own daughter's feast. Later, as Mitchell and I shared our last dance, he pulled me close and whispered, "Reverend Williams is my new hero." "Mine too," I admitted. "Your mom's never going to forgive this." "Good," I said, surprising myself with the conviction. "Maybe she'll think twice before wearing white to Kate's wedding." He laughed. "Bold of you to assume she's getting invited to Kate's wedding." As we swayed, I caught sight of the photographer reviewing his shots on his camera's display. He'd captured everything. My mother's grand entrance, the altar confrontation, Reverend Williams' stern face, my father leading her away, and finally, gloriously, Mitchell and me exchanging vows while my mother sat defeated in the pew. "Those are going in the album," I told Mitchell. "All of them. Every single one. Let it be a warning to future generations." The photo that ended up on social media, shared by dozens of guests, wasn't from the professional photographer. It was a phone shot from my cousin, Reverend Williams, at the altar, glasses perched on his nose, asking which one of us was the bride while my mother stood frozen in her wedding dress, her face a masterpiece of shock. It went viral. The caption read, "When you have to ask which one's the bride because the mob wore white." My mother called me crying a week later, saying I'd humiliated her in front of everyone. "No, Mom," I said, looking at my wedding album, filled with beautiful shots of Mitchell and me, with her nowhere in sight after the ceremony. "You humiliated yourself. Reverend Williams just refused to let you humiliate me." She hung up. We didn't speak for 6 months. When she finally reached out, she sent a photo of a dress she was considering for Kate's engagement party. It was beige. "Is this appropriate?" she asked. Progress. Kate later told me she'd already hired Reverend Williams to officiate her wedding, specifically requesting he be on white dress patrol. Some lessons, it turns out, need to be taught at an altar.